Chairman. The Honourable Stefan Dion responded to the Premier. I responded to the Premier. And really, the issue of fairness, of course, is very subjective depending on what part of the country you're in. We're all Canadians. And if we want to have a country, we're going to have to share both the good and the bad. I would suggest to you that when the present government decided to, under C-22, to bring in more seats for Alberta, British Columbia, and Ontario, we didn't have a problem with that, except that Ontario was shortchanged 20 members of Parliament, or 20 voices in Parliament. I think that that is unfair. Doesn't mean we don't agree that Alberta and British Columbia should have more, but that was unfair. I think it was unfair for the finance minister to suggest this is the last jurisdiction to invest in North America, given the fact that I deal with unemployed people every day as Member of Parliament. I deal with companies that are looking to invest in Richmond Hill. And when the Finance Minister of Canada says this isn't the place to invest in, it sends the wrong message. So I don't think that's fair. I think as a person who lives in Ontario, I'm quite happy to help pay for people who live in other parts of the country. I have no difficulty with that. But I do have difficulty when the First Minister of the land does not meet on a regular basis with the premiers. I think we need to engage people. And on fairness, we don't really know unless we sit down and have a dialogue. It doesn't mean we're going to always agree. We as the Liberal Party have said on EI, the 14 best weeks of earning, that's what it will be. But there is no separate EI account. As a former parliamentary secretary to 2 ministers of finance, that's a bit of a fallacy. There is no separate account, and that was the Auditor General who said so. But I think we've outlined very clearly, we believe in dialogue. And I think, Rita, you know that at the end of the day, we're only going to advance issues on a national housing strategy, on a national infrastructure strategy, on climate change by involving all provinces. And yes, Ontario needs to be the economic engine, and it won't be the economic engine if we continue to point fingers at it as we've seen the last 2.5 years.
Ms. Cadiz.
Thank you, Reza. To have a strong Canada, we need a strong Ontario. And the attacks have been unprecedented. The abandonment of our manufacturing sector. And we made a very strong commitment with our $1 billion manufacturing fund to help the manufacturing sector transition to a green global economy. And we are now being disconnected from it currently under the federal Conservative government. And we understand how to be a partner. Recently they said as well that the Conservative government is at least city friendly. I would say at least Ontario province friendly as well too. And we cannot afford any more of these antagonistic approach. And we certainly are more than some of our parts. And when one part of Canada is a difficulty, we do need to respond and to reach out to the other part. And I know that most Canadians have that generosity of spirit, but the government currently does not understand that. They said once, they said it doesn't matter if we have 1 country or 10 countries. It does matter.
I've been advised to ask the audience to hold their applause until the question has been answered by all the candidates to whom the question is posed, which seems like a good idea. On to Mr. Cole.
Thank you. I think what we have to remember as well when we look at our economy and why Ontario is hurting so badly right now, our whole economy has changed from manufacturing to a resource-based economy. And the part of the reason that our manufacturing is hurting so badly is the Canadian dollar has been so high in the last year or 2 years. When we look at it's come down quite a bit in the last few days, but it's been hovering around par for quite a while now, and that has hurt us tremendously. And we've fallen back into the hero of wood and drawer of water trend that we've had in past years. We need to focus on producing products that people actually want to buy. If we look at the pickup truck plant that's being closed in Oshawa, the reason that that's happened is because the price of gas is so high and the Canadian dollar is so high. So certainly the Green Party is going to look at the imbalance, and we've outlined that in our Vision Green, where we say rebalance the funding formula to ensure fairness across regions and provinces. And that's because of that fundamental change. Now, in order to get Ontario to be the manufacturing and the economic engine of Canada again, we need to look at what kind of products are we producing, and we need to change the type of cars that we make. If you look at fuel-efficient small cars, who's producing those cars? They're coming typically from Japan and Europe. We've missed about 10 years of development in that process. So that's where we need to invest heavily in our economy and in new products that people actually want to buy that will get Ontario back to where it was a few years ago. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you going to read the questions then? Go ahead.
This question has actually come up a few times, and it's for the Liberal and Conservative candidates. Canadian soldiers are in combat zone in Afghanistan by 2011. Aside from the human sacrifice, Canadian taxpayer have to pay way more than $15 billion. What is your position, party's position on this issue, and what is your future policy with respect to this issue? This question has been asked 3 times in the papers.
Thank you very much. Let me begin with Ms. Cadiz then.
Yes, our party's position is very clear that this mission needs to refocus, change to include more, not only military options, but development, diplomacy, and end in 2011. And that's something that I don't have confidence, I have to be honest. What we've seen previously, the lack of transparency of the Conservative federal government regarding this mission, Canadians have a right to know. They have a right to know what's going on, they have a right to know the dollar figure and exactly how we are doing also. And I really don't have the confidence that if this government would continue another day, that it really would end in 2011. So we do have to be responsible and give the proper support to our troops that are there and ensure that the mission changes. And we put a lot of effort into that, the Liberal Party and our leader, to ensure that it refocuses going forward. And we need to closely monitor that to ensure that that really does happen and that we get out of there by 2011, and that we have performed the best of our ability to help the Afghan people, and hopefully they will be equipped for a more peaceful country and region.
Mr. Wilford.
Mr. Chairman, as the National Defense Critic for the Liberal Party and as the Vice Chair of the Special Standing Committee on Afghanistan, I would suggest a few things. First of all, when we become the government on Tuesday, we will send a diplomatic note to NATO informing them that 2011 is the end date. We will go back to what we did when we left Kabul and the Turks came in, the policy of rotation. This is the United Nations mission which the NATO is exercising, and we are making a huge difference. I've been to Afghanistan on several occasions. I can say that 6 million more children are going to school, 600 doctors graduated this year in Afghanistan, 300 are women. But what is important is that we need to have accountability and transparency. The Manley report pointed that out very clearly. The resolution of March 13th pointed out very clearly. The government accounting approach turns out to be the worst of the G7. Again, that was put forth the other day. We need to emphasize the diplomacy. We need to emphasize development. Realistically, we are not going to win on the battlefield. I think everybody understands that. The National Department of Defense report of October 2007 said on the Soviet experience in Afghanistan that only the conditions for national reconciliation are going to happen. So we are there to train the National Afghan Army and police. Others will have to do the heavy lifting. But we will ensure, hopefully, a more stable Afghanistan in which, and I have met people both from the Mujahideen, ex-communists, ex-Taliban who are in the National Assembly. Not all are going to be embraced, but the conditions for national reconciliation. But unless a diplomatic note is sent on rotation, whatever the Prime Minister says isn't worth, well, I guess not the paper it's written on, because it isn't written, but we need to have it in writing. If not, nothing will happen. And the cost is very difficult, obviously, in terms of the assessment. One of the things I'm concerned about is post-traumatic stress disorder, the cost when our soldiers come home.
Thank you.